It might have been more my generation, but I know that when I was a kid, I loved making model airplanes. I had model train sets and things like that. Growing up, especially pre-internet, right, or even pre-gaming. This is before there were even video games and things like that. But I found a couple folders on models and miniatures. We did one episode last week, mostly on model trains and some of the miniatures as well. But there's so much material that I decided to keep going. And let's do one more episode on models and miniatures. Welcome back. This is Jeff Hicks, curator of the Strange As It Seems archives and grandnephew of John Hicks, who created Strange As It Seems in the late 1920s. We were talking last week about models and miniatures, and I found another one as I kept going in here. This is an amazing miniature, a tiny telegraph key and buzzer that really work. And the amazing thing is, these fit inside of a thimble. It's made by Tom Blanchard, Coscob, Connecticut. This also was featured. I mentioned one of these miniature model extraordinaire, I don't know what you call them, inventors, right? Engineers. But one of them was featured in the 1939 World's Fair. And so was this one. I've got a letter here from Modern Mechanics, Minneapolis. This is Tom Blanchard, also his own unusual radio, mechanical, and electrical devices. And I noticed that his was also featured. I mentioned last week that John Hicks scooped Ripley in 1939 for a spot at the World's Fair in New York City. Ripley had been featured every single World's Fair. I think these were every 4 years or so. And John Hicks in 1939 scooped him for a spot at the World's Fair, featuring Tom Blanchard's tiny telegraph key and buzzer. Funny enough, Ripley opened up an auditorium right down the road. He was so ticked off that he lost out to John Hicks that he tried to compete with an auditorium right down the road from the World's Fair. It was the first Ripley's Auditorium, ODD, by the way. And since then, he started building them all around the world, and that's what's left, interestingly enough. They're still around, some of these Ripley's auditoriums. There's one here in Hollywood, but that was actually the original idea, came from being ticked off at John Hicks for scooping him for the spot at the World's Fair. And here's Fred Hood. Love this guy. Model marine engine. Exerts a force of 6 tons. Had to be tested by an official boiler inspector before it could be operated. It took Fred 11 years to build it. Check out this photograph of Fred and his model marine engine. Looks like there was an article as well in the Los Angeles Times, 1940. Retired teacher builds marine engine just for fun. We'll get into more of these two of the carving models. There's quite a few of these, but this I thought was really interesting. A model of a steel mill. Ernest Werther of Dover, Ohio, carved an entire steel mill of walnut and maple wood. It's got a really cool photograph actually printed on the back of a postcard. Extraordinary. A Dover steel mill carved of walnut and maple wood. And last week we featured a couple of these guys from San Marino, Pasadena area where I grew up. But here's a guy from Santa Monica, which is where I now live, on the west side of LA. But Eugene Trumbull, West Los Angeles, California, has constructed about 50 different pieces of construction machinery in miniature that all work perfectly. Got a city of Santa Monica. They have no record of equipment being used patented by Gene, but they gave his address in West LA, Santa Monica area. But kind of amazing. 50 different pieces of construction machinery. There's some amazing kids in here too. I can't believe how young these guys were to have this much time as well outside of school to build these things. But here's a miniature roller coaster. This is crazy. Robert Weisel built it, and apparently the tiny cars can speed on this roller coaster a foot a second over 65 feet of track. Took him a year and a half. Highland Park, Pennsylvania kid, Robert Weisel, and Here's a article with some kind of close-ups of his roller coaster. A high school lad of Highland Park, Pennsylvania, spent a year and a half of spare time building this model roller coaster, and he is adjusting the chain here that pulls the cars to the top, and adjusting one of the cars on the chain. Crazy. The size of the car compared to Robert's hand. You can also see how tiny this is. It's incredible. Well, I love this too. I found his handwritten letter. He goes, I thought of building the roller coaster because after Christmas, children start to take down their trains and they build other trucks over furniture, makeshift bridges. And when the trains fell, they were damaged. So if they had a roller coaster, it would save wear and tear on the trains. That's how he decided to build a roller coaster. Crazy. As if a roller coaster wasn't enough, check this out. Here's a guy that built Harold Rupp of Fredonia, New York. He built an entire circus, complete with sideshow, circus train, animals, and performers. And all he used was a knife, hammer, and tweezers, and built this, the entire thing 1/4 to scale, called the Rupp Circus. Here's a great photograph of it. Holy smoke. Thing's amazing. And he even has his own letterhead here. The Big Little Show, from Mr. Rupp, and an article here as well. I love how it's, they call them shut-ins. I thought this is shut-ins to see model circus built by Fredonians. The circus, Rupp Circus, to give it the official title, is of course in miniature, but it's also large and growing. And it represents, according to its creator, an outlay of more than $8,000 in cash. To see. Mr. Rupp plans to use his model circus to help bring entertainment to shut-ins within 300-mile radius of Fredonia who are unable to get out for the real thing. What an incredible guy, Harold Rupp. Here's a guy, George Bogart. He built a mechanical horse that moves in steps like a real horse. It's capable of pulling a 300-pound load. It can be timed for different gaits, such as trotting, pacing, or galloping. It travels 25 miles per hour. That's kind of incredible, isn't it? Here we have a letter from the Cleveland Chamber of Commerce that helped put in touch with George Bogart, and have a handwritten letter from him as well. And here's the article from the newspaper, made of balsa wood and has a motor powered by 6-volt auto batteries. Pulls up to 300 pounds, 25 miles per hour. Bogart hopes to sell it to an amusement park. Here's one. This is incredible. Check this out. The Tin Can Robert E. Lee. This was featured in 1934 in January. It's the model of the famous Mississippi steamer. It's made by the 88-year-old William McCorkle. I've got a great photograph of that steamship built with tin cans, and kind of an amazing story. I've got all these handwritten letters back and forth. I guess they go back to like 1934. And funny enough, on one of these letters, it says William McCorkle, born August 3rd, 1845, died not yet. Amazing. But I did find a letter where John Hicks was trying to correspond back with him to feature him in the Pacific International Exposition. This was in February of 1936. And there's a note here that Mr. McCorkle had died, had passed away. So I think I have some of the last handwritten letters from him. And I do believe that John Hicks did actually feature this tin can steamship in the Pacific International Exposition in memory of William McCorkle from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And there's a couple of these guys that appeared on the same day. This is January 15th, looks like 1941. We got Carl Eric from Abilene, Kansas. He carves wooden guns that are exact replicas of the originals. That's kind of amazing. Featured in Hobby's Firearms. Some really cool photographs in here too. Check out these guns. that he carved, exact replicas, some even that come apart like a Colt revolver. Crazy. And a handwritten letter from him, Abilene, Kansas. Sincerely yours. Hope to hear from you soon. Crazy. All, I guess, carved from Basement Workshop, wheeling out a small scale, carved by this versatile man. I think it's some kind of white pine that was particular to these carvings. But on the same day, here's another really interesting guy. August Mack from Bedford, Indiana. He built a 21-foot snake, which is incredible in and of itself, but he envisioned it, amazingly enough, in a dream. And here's a photograph. The picture shows his vision and dream to create a brazen serpent 21 feet long. All the vision and dream is the answer to in my prayers to God to not let me be a wage slave all the days of my life. How about that? Lo, all these things worketh God oftentimes with man, do bring back his soul from the pit to be enlightened with the light of the living. And here's, looks like him also carving a really cool bust of Will Rogers. What an amazing guy. An amazing article too. Odd dream gives Hoosier stone carver inspiration, realizing it gains him money. But what an amazing story. Dream gave August Mack an inspiration that took him off the Lawrence County relief rolls. Amazing. He was on, I guess this is also, 1930s, right? Post-Depression. Mack had the dream in 1923 when he was gainfully employed as a stone carver in the Indiana limestone mills near Bedford. In my dream, he said, I was standing beside a big river with rough and choppy waves. I saw a better land on the other side, and I wanted to go there. And one of them said, halt, you cannot cross the river, for you have disobeyed the Lord at various times of your life. Then, continued Mack, I saw a large serpent at my feet, blocking my path to the river. I pleaded with the cherubs to let me cross the river, but they said no. The river is 16 feet deep, and each foot represents 1 year, which will bar you from crossing it. Strange as it seems. Check this out. Here's a Bug's chair built on the head of a pin by McDonald Taylor. It weighs 31 millionths of an ounce. I guess you can't really have a photograph, or maybe there were some that were returned. But here's the article. Maybe I can blow this up. Sets a record. The world's smallest chair, standing on the head of a pin, being examined under a microscope. The crystal ball that he has it in here protects it from his breath. What an incredible thing there. McDonald Taylor from Des Moines, Iowa. Another interesting guy here, George Ames from New Britain, Connecticut. He's a student of the history and use of primitive tools, and basically recreates all these primitive tools as a hobby. All the ancient implements he's produced are in use still somewhere today. I've got some great handwritten correspondence from George with my grandma, Elsie Hicks, as well as here's an article of him. Old tools bring history alive for the handcrafter. For Ames' strange hobby is recreating primitive tools used by people who ended their earthly labors hundreds, even thousands of years ago. And he has a really interesting brochure in here. I wonder how they ever did it. Pretty amazing how it was actually done. So he kind of figured out how they built things like the Tower of London, Rheims Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, kind of all of that. And I guess, let me tell you the story of the origin and development of some of our common carpenter's tools. So I guess it was sort of the fascination to how these things were built. And at the bottom, it says 30 years experience in the hardware and building material fields. Past 10 years, head of own business. George Ames, Laconia, New Hampshire. And here's one from the London News, I guess in 1935, that John Hicks featured about 6 years later in 1941. But it was a replica of Sir Francis Drake's famous Golden Hind ship, and it was exactly half size. And here it is being put to sea, crazy enough, at Plymouth, which in 1577 saw the start, and in 1580 globe in the Golden Hind. So it's a half-size model of the ship, and it was playing a part in the forthcoming Navy model in, I guess, what they called Navy Weeks. And here's a fascinating ship model. This was made entirely of leather. Check this out. 5,500 flags and emblems of all nations. It includes ancient banners, pennants, international code flags, and all of that as well. And he actually sent in, this is amazing, J.H. Hambrick from Long Beach. And he actually sent in a piece of leather to John Hicks on one side, and a replica of the Mayflower drawn on leather with all of these really cool flags. St. George, St. Andrew's Cross, the Great Union. I guess these are some of the flags that were on that. And he drew them and painted them into a piece of leather for John Hicks, and just gave it to him. Kind of an amazing thing there. And then here's the photograph of this ship made of leather with all the amazing flags. J.H. Hambrick, incredible. This cracks me up. I was putting it away. Here's the letter. There will be no more interesting items from me to the renowned John Hicks. I was under the impression that your company paid for such items as the leather ship replica of the Mayflower. So apparently he sent him hoping to get paid. That's pretty amazing. I know John Hicks had a lot of people send things in and expect to be paid. He wasn't in the business of doing that, but kind of an incredible, still an incredible guide nonetheless. Here's an interesting, we featured a chair last time that was built on the head of a pin, probably the smallest chair, but here's a chair complete with a double woven bottom that was built inside a narrow-necked bottle. Crazy. Here's a couple of really cool photographs of the gentleman who did that. Floyd Bird was his name, as well as a photograph of that. And I love this. He's a taxidermist. What a beautiful letter written on his letterhead. Glad to verify the fact that I constructed a miniature chair in a square quart whiskey bottle, the different parts being entered through the neck of the bottle and assembled inside by the means of a wire bent in different ways as found necessary. The stoppers carved from a piece of broom handle with a cross beam inside, which is inserted through a peg through the stopper, making it impossible to remove the stopper without destroying the chair inside. Crazy. Wow, check this out. Here's $1 million replica of the Liberty Bell. Contains 11,600 pearls, 366 diamonds, and over 26 pounds of silver. Holy moly, worth at this time, and this is like, I guess, 1939 in the LA Times, over $1 million made by the Japanese for the New York World's Fair. Also, the 1939 World's Fair. This was featured 11,600 cultured pearls, 366 diamonds, 26 pounds of silver. Crazy. Here's a birdcage cathedral. Crazy. Yeah, I think what we'll do now is we'll go into buildings. Some of these models of buildings here. This is pretty incredible. Birdcage Cathedral, 4 feet high. Took 3 years to build. A beautiful replica of a cathedral, but it also functions as a birdcage. Crazy. So 1937 article of Frank Barron and his birdcage. And another miniature cathedral featured in the era of John Hicks. Crazy. Check this out. Took 7 years to build. 100,000 beads, 500 razor blades, 36 bottles, 24 pieces of tile, and 70 tubes of cement. Just a little tiny photograph of that. Crazy. Who made that? Charles Henninger, Woodbury Heights, New Jersey. And almost all of these were men, but I did find one here, Mrs. Florence Vick, 79 years old, also in Los Angeles. She built her own 9-room home, a model of it, studied the garden with innumerable tile and stone churches, animals, ships, airplanes. She built a total of 10 houses, entirely of seashells, and a 63-room dormitory. Amazing. I've got a photograph here of Florence Vick, and I love this too. A full page from the Los Angeles Times in 1942, featuring Florence Vick with the birdhouse she built from bits of stone, building hobbyist, and her fanciful garden. Here's a guy from Atlantic City, New Jersey, also made a model church, but check it out. He made it of straw hats. Carmelo Alaimo, operator of a hat cleaning shop, and I guess he was picking up some of these straw hats, couldn't quite figure out what to make of them, and check it out. He built himself on a church made of old straw hats back in 1939, and I love these letters that come in here, corroborated by the Chamber of Commerce of Atlantic City, letter from 1941. And here's one coming from the headquarters of the United States Army Reception Center. This is 1942, so shortly after the start of World War II. An exact replica of the New Cumberland, Pennsylvania Army Reception Center, made from 1,000 tiny pieces of balsa wood. This is Sergeant Robert Sears, including railroad tracks and a river. Took him 3 months to construct. Here's Robert Sears with his extraordinary reconstruction of the Cumberland, Pennsylvania Army Reception Center. Another cathedral. This one's made of matchsticks. Confined to the Mount Morris State Hospital, Corning, New York, Ralph Ferraro, a mechanic, built a Cathedral of St. Raphael. Took him 73 days using only glue, a razor blade, and 16,808 safety matches. Incredible. Wow, what a... there he is sitting in his hospital bed. Oh, that's something to do while you're laid up in the hospital, isn't it? How about the groundskeeper here of Goucher College in Baltimore, Carol Rule? He fashions balsa wood miniatures of famous buildings using only a pocket knife, tweezers, razor blades, and glue. That's it. He has a replica of the Cathedral of Canterbury. Look at that. Featured in The Sun, Baltimore, Maryland, 1953, Model Man. Crazy. And here he is on the grounds of, he's a groundskeeper of a church, and there's his model. Holy moly, look at that. Canterbury Cathedral. What an incredible work of art there. Crazy. Began his hobby in 1936 when he started fashioning a miniature of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. Before 1936, he painted pictures, but people would look over his shoulder as he sketched. He didn't like it. So he turned to woodworking in seclusion and transferred his artistic integrity to that medium. What an amazing guy here. Carol Rule, groundskeeper of the Goucher College, Baltimore. Bill Weed, here he is, art student of the California College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland. He built an entire imaginary English village out of clay. Here's a great photograph with, again, another cathedral that he built, and a letter from the California College of Arts and Crafts, who are very, this is from James Cheville, the Office of Public Relations, very proud of their student Bill Weed, a senior student at the California College of Arts and Crafts, has created an imaginary town called Woodminster and an imaginary kingdom called Womanay. Crazy. The town, made out of clay, fills a table about 8.5 by 3 feet. Buildings are almost mostly imaginary, but modeled obviously after English architecture. Several of the buildings derive directly from famous London landmarks, such as the Parliament Building, St. Paul's Cathedral, and the Wellington Arch, but the buildings are less than 3 inches high, made from various colored clays to give added realism to the display. Trees are made from bits of tree moss gathered from woods near his home. And the automobiles and buses, about 1/3 to 1/4 inch in length. The town has a river running through the central area. Crazy. The most amazing thing of all is that he has made maps and charts of it. The map shows all the streets, parks, rivers, and landmarks. The charts reveal the census of Woodminster, the telephone numbers, special locations of fire and police stations, art museums, and bus lines. What an incredible imagination of Bill Weed, art student at the California College of Arts and Crafts, Oakland, California. Hey, how about this one? The world's sweetest capital, replica of the Louisiana state capitol, made from sugar lumps. It was made by Mr. and Mrs. Lee Herzberg of Baton Rouge, and there's a replica of it here. And I guess it was tendered or given to the governor and Mrs. Leach of Baton Rouge. And the jade green pagoda, 50 inches high, composed of thousands of pieces. They were so accurately fitted together that the whole thing could be moved as one piece. Took 4 years to make. Beautiful jade green pagoda exhibited at Chicago. I guess it took scores of workmen a period of 4 to 5 years. Crazy. And there was just found this in the back. I couldn't find the comic strip, but kind of an amazing one. Also, just for the articles that it was featured in, Modern Mechanics. I guess this goes back to December of 1928 when John Hicks found this. So this is probably one of the very first kind of stories he found. But it was a tea kettle made from a 1-cent penny. Crazy. And here it is with the ruler indicating the size. SBC, the veteran starter in collegiate games. He wore it as a watch fob in the John Hicks Strange as It Seems cartoon on the back page of the Brooklyn Times. There appeared recently a drawing of this tiny tea kettle. Yeah, I couldn't find the comic strip, but I did find the article here, and this was kind of amazing. This is from Modern Mechanics. There was also a professional safecracker who was a friend to a banker. That was kind of amazing. And then I found this too. This is right at World War I, and I thought this was pretty amazing. These photographs of the frontline battle action show how the death-dealing machines developed by modern science have revolutionized the business of war. Newest types of military airplanes carrying bombs equipped with several machine guns. Wow. This shows what happens when a 2,000-pound aerial bomb is dropped on a target. Tanks were invented during the World War. So this is, after World War I, before we even knew there was going to be a World War II. But really just right when they began realizing what modern mechanics can do to the art of war, I found that quite poignant as well. So that wraps this up. What a journey through hobbies. So far, we're kind of in the middle of our trek through the hobbies. This was miniatures and models. We wrapped that up with a couple of episodes. If you like content like this, please hit the bell to subscribe. Lots more to come. I'm just wading through hobbies right now. I got so many files and subjects to wade through as I archive the Strange as It Seems archives. But please hit the bell to subscribe, leave a comment, hit the bell to like. I love hearing, especially if some of these are your family members, if you still have these models or these collections around. I would love to hear from some of the surviving family members. Most of these people probably passed away years, maybe decades ago. And I'll leave you as I always do with a quote from John Hicks's book, published in 1928, same time as I was just reading from in his first book where he compiled The Strange as It Seems comic strips. He says the author launches this book of the curious in nature and humankind on the vast sea of public opinion with the hope that it will fulfill its mission to entertain and acquaint its readers with some of the marvels of the world in which we live.